Welcome to the Brutus Monroe YouTube channel. My name is Gina Crotchfeld. I'm going to share 5 cards with you made using the contents of June's inspiration box, Radiant Rainbow. The first card uses one of the pattern papers from the Radiant Rainbow paper pack. Here I'm cutting off the bottom 2 rows of the rainbows along the black edge. Next, I'm going to use the Brutus Monroe Raven Detail ink to stamp a pattern on a piece of white cardstock 3 5/8 by 4 7/8. Here I'm using the Brutus Monroe Perfect Blend cardstock. I used the star and circle cluster along with a single star to create this background. I used Copic markers to color in my background pattern, but you can use any markers. Anything works great on the Perfect Blend cardstock. I colored all my stars in with a turquoise blue Copic B4. I colored the larger circles in yellow, Copic marker Y8. Colored the smallest circles in with YG9. Next, I'm going to stamp the medium-sized rainbow. This is a rainbow stamp you'll see at the bottom right of your set. I wanted to use a fuchsia ink to match the fuchsia color of the glitter cardstock that's included in the inspiration box. I chose Catherine Pooler's Flirty Fuchsia ink. I stamped the image on a piece of Perfect Blend cardstock. I get a nice crisp image. Then I use the dies that are included in the box to cut it out. I want to get rid of the white edge that's left when I cut my image out of the pattern paper. So I take a black marker and from behind, I just run it along that white edge and fill it in. You can see here how it's going to cover up the white that's sticking out. Always do it from behind so that you don't risk slipping and making any marks on the front of your paper where they will show on your card. Here I'm going to stick that rainbow pattern paper on the bottom section of my card front. You can see I didn't bother to stamp the pattern on the bottom third of the white cardstock because I knew that my pattern paper was going to cover it. I'm just using a dry adhesive. It's an adhesive runner that I like to use. I'm going to line the pattern paper up to the right side of the card, and then once it's sealed down, I'm just going to flip it over and cut off the excess on the back with a pair of scissors. I stamped the sun image from the Radiant Rainbow stamp set in a yellow ink. I used Catching Rays from Catherine Pooler, but any bright yellow ink will do. I used the coordinating dies to cut the sun out. I love that the complete die set is included with the inspiration box. It makes it so much easier to use all these stamps. Next, I stamped the sentiment that says, "Have a rainbow kind of day," in a bright blue. I used Something Borrowed from Catherine Pooler. There's no die for the sentiments, so I just used my scissors to fussy cut around it. Next, I'm going to put my layers of the card together. Here, I'm using Barely Art liquid glue on a piece of black cardstock, 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. I used Brutus Monroe Raven cardstock. I glue that onto a piece of the fuchsia glitter paper that was included in the inspiration box. That fuchsia paper is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. Next, I'm going to glue that layer onto the front of the card base. Next, I'm gluing the stamped white card panel that I made earlier and colored in with my Copics onto the black layer. I use foam adhesive on the sun image, the rainbow image, and the sentiment to give the card some dimension. Before peeling off the release paper, I'm placing the images on the front of the card and moving them around until I get them in the exact spots that I want. Then I take each piece and take off the release paper and stick it onto the front of my card. With this color window card, I wanted to create almost like an optical illusion. I thought that the wavy circle card panel that's included in the box was perfect for this. The idea was to square in and keep the design centered. So you'll see I played around a little bit with the measurements until I got it just right. The wavy circle card panel is 3 3/4 inches by 3 3/4 inches, cutting in from the sides to keep the design centered. I take the red piece with the oval die and center it over the wavy circles to make light pencil marks as a guide for where I'm going to ink. Here I take a low tack tape and I mask off about 1/2 inch on each side of the panel. You can hold the oval die cut panel on top and make pencil marks as guidelines, but I had an idea of about the space I needed. I blend the color of the rainbows from top to bottom. I start with Festive Berries Distress Ink, and I'm just using a round foam blender that velcros right onto the end of the handle. Orange is Spiced Marmalade. I use mustard seed for yellow. Green is Mowed Lawn. Blue is Prize Ribbon. And the last color on the bottom is Dusty Concord. I stamp one of the smaller rainbows. This rainbow is on the bottom left of the stamp set, and if you're looking for it, it's the one with the heart outline. I'm also stamping the open cloud, and you'll want to pay attention to this because there's two clouds on the stamp set, and one is solid black so that it'll be colored completely with whatever ink you ink it in. But the one I chose for this is an outline of the cloud. I also used the star that has some zigzag lines in it. I'm stamping these in Raven Detail ink on Perfect Blend cardstock. Next, I cut them out with the coordinating dies. Here I lay my pieces down and I'm just moving them around so that I can decide where I want my sentiment. For this card, I'm using the included conversation clippings. You get 4 sheets of these. 2 are black text on white paper, the other 2 are white text on black paper. These are one of my favorite Brutus Monroe products. It makes it so easy to put any sentiment that you want. I prefer using these over stamping a sentiment. You get a very clean look, and you can also color blend right over these. Next, I start putting the layers of my card together. This red cardstock is 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. I'm adhering it to a piece of black cardstock that's cut to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And that's going to go right on top of my card base. The rainbow blended wavy circle card panel is going to get centered right on top of the card. Then I'm taking the red smaller piece. This piece is 3 inches by 4 1/4 with an oval die cut out of the center, which is about 1 3/4 inches wide. I used foam adhesive to give this dimension and create a window effect. Then I use a black marker and I just did little dashes all around the edges to make it look like faux stitching. The sentiment Color My World goes in the top right corner with foam adhesive. The star at the top left corner also with foam adhesive to give some dimension. is going at the bottom right with foam adhesive, and the cloud will go just to the bottom left of the rainbow. For a final touch, I add some sequins that are included in the inspiration box. The next card is a fairly simple shaker card. I kept this card black and white because I really wanted the rainbow sparkle embossing powder that's included in the box to show off. It's got a beautiful holographic shine to it, so this embossing powder that's included will heat clear, but it has a punch of just glitter and sparkle. So you'll see here I am stamping the star cluster with clear embossing ink on black Raven cardstock, and then I'm going to use the Rainbow Sparkle embossing powder. Once the Rainbow Sparkle embossing powder is heated, you can see those rainbow colors really come alive. I put my stick and stamp mat down in my stamping platform, and I'm going to lay down a piece of white cardstock. This cardstock is slightly smaller than the black. It's 3 7/8 by 5 1/8, and I'm going to use the black die cut panel from earlier as a guide because I'm going to want my rainbow image to line up underneath the shaker window. This is one of the larger rainbows, and I'm going to stamp this in Raven Detail ink. I kept this card very basic, simple, because I wanted kind of an elegant feel, and I really wanted to show off that embossing powder and the sequins as well. I'm checking to make sure that my pieces line up. I'm going to create a window with the top black panel. You can really see how that embossing powder sparkles as I move the card around. You can see all those rainbow colors. It's a really nice complement to the black and white. So here I'm using tear tape, and I'm lining it around the window, and I'm going to lay a piece of acetate on top of that because that's going to create the window that's going to hold our sequins in. Once my acetate is down to cover the die cut rainbow, I'm taking foam adhesive and placing it around the rainbow because this is the section that's going to hold our sequins in to make the shaker card. I add more foam adhesive to the rest of the card panel because I want this to lay evenly on top of the white piece with the black rainbow on it. If you look to my left, you'll see the large bag of sequins. That's the sequins that come in the inspiration box. It's a big bag. So I poured some of them into my little tray, and then I'm using that spout to pour the sequins on top of the rainbow image. Here, I'm just nudging them to keep them on that image because next I'm going to lay the black panel on top of it to create the window. So I want to keep all those sequins inside the window, and I don't want any of them to stick to the adhesive. I peel off all the release papers, and now I'm just placing this right on top to create my shaker window. Once I have that secure, I add some liquid adhesive. Here is Barely Art liquid glue, and I'm just going to lay that whole shaker panel right on top of my card base. I'm using the outline cloud twice, stamping it in black Raven ink, and then die cutting it to put one cloud at the bottom of each side of the rainbow. I chose the sentiment "sending hugs and prayers" because I felt like it just went with the muted vibe of this card. Once I put the sentiment on, I decided that it needed a little something more. So I stamped the shooting star in Raven detail ink, and then I die cut it using the coordinating dies. Now all that's left to do is adhere all the elements with foam adhesive. When I saw the bright lime green cardstock in the inspiration box, I had to use it. So the idea for this card was really inspired by that bright color, and I just had to figure out a way to implement it into a bright card that it would coordinate with. To get a different look from the cards that I've done so far, I decided to use Distress Oxides. So the first thing I do is stamp a row of the solid rainbow with the heart cut out in picked raspberry. I make a row of orange rainbows in carved pumpkin and just start a little bit to the left. I don't want my rainbows to line up exactly, so each time I start a new row, I shift over a little bit. The yellow is squeezed lemonade, and when I finish that, again, I'm going to shift a little bit more to the left, and I'm going to create the last row with twisted citron. I started with a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of the Brutus Monroe Perfect Blend cardstock, but once my image was stamped, I cut it down to 3 5/8 by 4 7/8. Next, I stamp a heart from the Radiant Rainbow stamp set in picked raspberry, and then a cloud in twisted citron, and then I'm going to die cut them with the coordinating dies. I'm stamping some of the smaller elements in Black Raven Detail ink right on top of the rainbow background that I created. If you look to the left of the screen, you can see the Radiant Rainbow stamp set. There's a lot of really cool detailed images. Look close and you'll see there's even a face that can be added onto any of the rainbows or even in between the wings. There's a lot of really neat elements to this set, and it makes it easy to create these fun, funky backgrounds. Again, I'm using one of the sentiments from the conversation clippings. This time I'm using the words that are white on black paper. I cut pieces of ribbon because I want it to look like each of the elements, the heart and the cloud, are hanging down from the ribbon. So I'm going to cut each piece and then I'm going to adhere it to the card panel and wrap it around the back. One of the things that I really love about these boxes is that I can get inspiration from just a single item. So if I choose one item to work with, like the lime green cardstock, and I know that that wants to be a focal point, I know that all of the items in the box are going to coordinate with that one item that I chose from it. It really makes it easy to push your creative limits. These boxes definitely take me on a journey. I decided to stamp more of the little elements in black ink once I got a feel for space when the other elements were laid out. Once my ribbon is adhered, I stick my stamped background image to a piece of black raven cardstock That's 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. Next, I'm going to take that black piece and stick it to the lime green cardstock, and that lime green cardstock is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And then this whole thing is going to go right on the front of my card base. I'm using the foam adhesive to put the heart at the bottom of the left ribbon and the cloud at the bottom of the right ribbon, and then more foam adhesive to put the sentiment in the bottom right corner of the card. For a final touch, I add some of those amazing holographic sequins that are included in the box. The final card is going to use another piece of the pattern paper from the Radiant Rainbow pattern paper pack, and we're also going to use one of the pre-printed card panels. I chose this butterfly cluster, so we're going to cut this down to 3 by 4.5 inches, keeping the design centered. And then once that panel is cut down, we're going to cut it into 4 equal pieces or quadrants that are each going to be 1.5 by 2 1/4 inches. Next, I'm going to stick each of my pieces onto my stick and stamp mat. This makes it so easy to blend each one, especially since each quadrant is going to be a different color. First, I start with Twisted Citron Distress Ink, and I'm going to blend the bottom right quadrant starting from the top left corner out. The idea that I'm going for here is that when these 4 quadrants come together on the front of the card, it's going to look like a big color burst. So the color will be darker and saturated in the center and then fade out as it blends to the outer corners. The next color I used was Dusty Concord on the bottom left quadrant. On the top left quadrant, I'm using Peacock Feathers. And for the top right quadrant, I used Mustard Seed. Next, I stamped the sun image in Raven Detail ink on a piece of the yellow cardstock from the inspiration box, and then I'm going to cut it out with the coordinating dies. I take a piece of the Rainbow Dots pattern paper cut to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and I'm sticking that right onto the front of my card base. I have a piece of white cardstock that I used a stitched edge die for. This piece is 3 3/8 by 4 3/4, and I'm putting that onto a piece of black raven cardstock that is 3 5/8 by 5 inches. This piece gets centered right onto the front of my card. Next, I'm lining up each of the 4 quadrants that I inked, and I'm going to place those on the front of the card with some foam adhesive to create dimension. You'll notice in the left corner there's some extra pieces. I had originally stamped and die cut some of the little pieces from the stamp set that I was going to use around the sun, but my final decision was to use sequins instead. You'll see that coming up. I stamped the Let It Shine sentiment in black ink, and I'm just fussy cutting that out, and I'm going to pop it with foam adhesive on the front of my card. I'm going to set the sun right down in the center as you see it and put that with some foam adhesive so that pops out also. Once the sun and the sentiment are down, the final touches is to add the sequins. I start by gluing down a row of sequins around the sun. I do them close together and a lot of them, and then as I get to the outer edges, I start to spread the sequins apart more and not put them as close together. This way it looks like a burst effect. And that, my friends, is 5 very different cards made with one incredible subscription box. If you're not already a subscriber, head on over to Brutus Monroe and sign up today. Your box will come each month with a full color pamphlet with step-by-step instructions for each of these cards. This is just a small sample of the possibilities, So grab yours today so you can create your own ending.